Hey, what's up, Whiskey Network? It's Mark Pruett, writer for the Whiskey Network. Today is a great day in the Speakeasy because we have an incredible guest to share with you. First, I want to welcome Whiskey Network co-founder Chad Cadden to the room. Chad, we are honored to have your whiskey expertise in the room.
Thank you, Mark.
You're welcome. Next up, this is a founding member of Anthrax. He has also played in other bands like Mr. Bungle, Motor Sister, The Damn Thing, Stormtroopers of Death, probably a ton of others that I'm not putting in there. All combined with a total of over 10 million records sold. A star of television shows, author of books, author of comics, spoken word performer, and he's a bona fide bourbon geek. Ladies and gentlemen, Scott Ian is officially in the Whiskey Network Speakeasy. Scott, welcome and thank you for coming.
Oh, thanks for that fabulous introduction.
You deserve it, man. So, let's talk whiskey. Chad, with a nod to your superior whiskey knowledge, let's get this thing kicked off.
First off, I want to raise my glass and say cheers to you, Scott.
Oh, cheers. Thanks.
Cheers.
So let me start off by, some people say rap and metal should never mix, but we know your stance on that. But whiskey and music go hand in hand. Tell us a little bit about your journey into whiskey.
My journey into whiskey. Well, it definitely wasn't, I think, most people's normal path of maybe finding out about booze, you know. I mean, like most kids, I certainly experimented when I was a youngster, and, you know, whether it was trying to get older kids to buy us beer or stuff like that. But my journey was like a different one because on my 18th birthday, and, you know, this is back in 1981, I guess, right? I would have turned 17 in 1980, so 18. Way back when, that's when drinking age in New York was 18. And obviously I had drank already before that. I had a fake ID, and we would sneak in the McSorley's Ale House, like when I was 16 and stuff like that. But I got so sick drinking cheap vodka when I was like around 18 years old that I didn't drink like hardly anything, like not even a beer for years after that, which was kind of good timing for me because it was the formative years of the band, because the band started in the summer of 81. So all those early years of Anthrax, I was not sober for any reason other than the smell of any type of alcohol would turn my stomach. So it wasn't until years later that I even slowly started getting back on the horse, and then I'd be able to drink beer again. And maybe I got into wine, maybe in like my late 20s, early 30s, I got introduced to drinking good wine. Whiskey, even later. I mean, really, I didn't start drinking whiskey till I was like 33 years old, because of another bad experience, which I don't know if you want me to get into that now or, but anyway, in 85, I was in London and I bumped into Lemmy in a bar in London, and Lemmy was my hero. Literally, I was wearing a Motorhead sweatshirt when I walked into this bar, and there's Lemmy. And I finally got up the nerve to go talk to him. And now this is at the point in my life where I wasn't drinking. I was sober. And so I walked up and offered to buy Lem a drink. And he said to me, "No, you're in my town. I'll buy you a drink." And I didn't know what the answer to that question of what are you having? I didn't know even what to say. So I made the mistake of saying, "I'll have what you're having." He was drinking Jack and Coke. And I had never even had a Jack and Coke in my life. I had never had a whiskey in my life at that point in time. And so I drank a Jack and Coke with Lem, and it went down real easy. It was super sugary and sweet, like a Jack and Coke tastes. But I didn't know that at the time. And I then started having a conversation with Lemmy, my hero, and he drinks Jack and Cokes like water. So I just kept having another one and another one and another one until the next thing I knew, I was being dragged out of bed by my manager the next morning because we had to get on like a plane to Munich for the next stop on our promo tour. and I felt like I'd been run over by a truck. And he had to fill me in on how I had ran out of the bar, and he ran out to see what was wrong with me. Thought maybe I was just going to be sick, and I was diving into piles of garbage on the street and landing on concrete, and I was full on alcohol poisoning. So again, no more whiskey for me for many years. About 80 90, 12 years later, it took me 12 years to have another whiskey, and that was when we toured with Pantera in '97, and Dimebag Darrell taught me basically. He literally taught me how to drink. I could honestly say I really actually learned how to even just be a social drinker when I turned 30, like 33 years old. So drinking came much later in life for me, which I think is a very good thing, actually.
Yeah, that's not a bad thing.
I think we've all been in with the Jack and Coke mix before.
Yeah.
So now that you've gotten into whiskey a little bit or a lot, do you have any particular brands or brands or distilleries that you favor?
I mean,
that's a loaded question. I know.
Yeah, I guess, it's sometimes it just depends on the mood or what I have in the house, or I go to the store and I go into the liquor store for me, like that's like going to Toys R Us when I was a kid. I mean, all the bottles and all the labels and all the colors. Yeah, it's like but I mean, I've got my regulars. When I first got into it with Darrell, his famous drink was the Blacktooth Grin, which was generally a shot of Crown with a hint of Coke, and again, really easy to drink. But I quickly realized my palate was not into the sweet stuff and the real sugary stuff. So I figured there's got to be better whiskey out there, and this was in the '90s, and I got into Maker's Mark, as I think a lot of people did in the '90s when Maker's kind of blew up. And I would just drink straight Maker's. That became my go-to then. And even still now, once in a while, almost like, because I'll drink it and it brings me back. It still tastes exactly the same. Like I just tried that Maker's 46 recently, and I was like, wow, this kind of takes me back. But these days I would say, well, obviously Hill Rock. Because besides the fact that we're in business with them and I become great friends with the owners, they just make a great product.
They do. Tim does a great job up there.
So I mean, their rye has certainly become my go-to of late. But I mean, I'm fans of lots of, like right now downstairs. I've got barrel bourbon. I've got a bunch of that right now. I've got just like for cocktails, like Hill Rock Rye. I'm not making cocktails with. I'm drinking that straight. But and stuff on that level, like even the barrel. Like I just got this bottle of this 9-year-old barrel bourbon, which was delicious, and their 4-year-old rye, which was amazing. And then I've got this other barrel Dovetail,
that's a real good one.
Yeah, I just have a feeling that's going to be great. I haven't cracked that one yet. I use just like general, like for cocktails, like Four Roses, small batch, or just like a Michter's, but not the fancy stuff. They're just like a general Michter's bourbon or something like that for cocktails. I just got my hands on a bottle of, they were nice enough to send it to me, from the distillery of French Lick. They put out this thing called Unpretentious High Rye that I got to taste back in December. I'm friends with that guy, Fred Minnick, and he sent me a little taster bottle of it. And it was so damn good. And then the guy that owns the distillery of French Lick, I guess he's a fan, and he sent me his last bottle of this stuff. And I'm afraid to open it now because I don't want to finish it.
I was able to try that about 2 months ago. A friend of mine stopped over who's traveling the country in a van. And that was really a tasty whiskey.
Yeah, it's so good. I'm totally drawing a blank right now on what else I have downstairs. There's a lot. I'm looking behind you to see what I recognize.
I only keep a few bottles out. This is like the bowling pin bottle. That's a 1968 Jim Beam.
Nice.
So good. But I got what do I got back here? I got my private barrel of Jack Daniel's Barrel Proof, which is a very delicious selection. I just picked up the Woodford Reserve 17-year-old limited release.
Oh, nice. I love, yeah, even just regular plain old Woodford is
Woodford does some great stuff.
great. Just like you can't go wrong. That's always good.
We
I
just-
used to drink back in the early 2000s. I used to go to a place called Vendome Liquors, which was near where I lived. And, I used to go in there and I would just, my regular bourbon was Blanton's because they would have it in there for $50. And
Now, where is it?
not anymore.
Gone.
Yeah, good luck
Right,
today
right.
finding it that way.
But
Yeah.
back then, and I used to drink that, and I would buy bottles of Pappy, and they would have it in there. I've still got one bottle left that I know on that the info I got from you guys. It said, "Do you have like a unicorn bottle?" I don't know if this would, but I've got a bottle of 20-year-old Pappy. That's I've had since then, since the early 2000s. That I bought back then for like $130.
Right.
So,
Those unicorn bottles are fun to chase. I've been drinking whiskey a long time, and we all have those special bottles. Like, what if I could find another bottle of E.H. Taylor seasoned wood? I might give one of my kids away. Maybe. I'm not sure. I got 6 of them, so I could spare one.
Right.
But just a fantastic whiskey. It wasn't reviewed super great, but for my palate, kind of like yourself, it sounds like you're a fan of wheated whiskeys. I'm a big wheated fan myself.
Yeah, I'm, but both too. I mean, I've if anything, I've probably drank way more rye than I have in the last, let's say, 2 years than I have bourbon.
Right. So you guys did 5 barrel selections from what we've seen. You did a Jefferson's, a Knob Creek, and then 3 Hill Rocks. I definitely see the rye influence. Do you have any more coming out in the woodworks?
Not yet. We the 40th anniversary of the band is in July. So
Congratulations on that.
Thank you. We did talk to Hill Rock about doing something. So I'm sure those discussions will, I'm sure it's going to happen.
Yeah.
We just haven't really talked about what the juice in the bottle is going to be.
Right.
Maybe they have something extra special that I don't know about. Like I was there in November. We came home from New York in end of November. So I know they are sitting on some stuff. I actually have a barrel of rye there that needs to be dumped, like my own personal barrel that needs to be dumped at this point. Like I think they said the latest, the end of April. They don't want it to go any longer than that. So maybe that will be the 40th anniversary. It's just something I tasted that I out of the barrel that I fell in love with, then tasted it again a couple of months later, and I felt like it had gotten even better. And there was no way for me to deal with it at the end of last year. And I said, can't we just sit on it longer? And they said, yeah, probably the longest we'd want it to sit in this barrel is till the end of April. So who knows, maybe we'll dump that and that'll end up being it.
Right on. So I do a lot of barrel picks myself for our whiskey group. When I'm in the process of going to do a barrel pick, like we recently did a Sagamore barrel pick, which great rye whiskey. I always go to their standard bottles and kind of refamiliarize myself with. And when I approach it, I try to find something in one of the barrels that kind of just really stands up and pops, and that profiles a feature of it. How do you go about your barrel picks?
Just whatever tastes good.
Tastes good, yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
simple's best sometimes.
I'm still, I don't claim to have any great knowledge of whiskey, or I just like the taste of it. And I know, so to just even have the opportunity to have met the Hill Rock people and become friends with them, and we've stayed at the distillery a couple of times, myself and my family, and just to have this relationship and this opportunity, and to get to go in the rick house and use the thief and take the whiskey out of the barrel and do that, just like, let's go taste some barrels. It's just like it's just such an amazing experience for me. I had never done that before before this, before last year. So it's still all new to me, and it's just such a great experience. But yeah, all that being said, certainly when you go from barrel to barrel and you're tasting, obviously I do taste different things. And
Yeah.
like when we were choosing these last two releases that we did, I had tasted 8 barrels and all good, but I had definitely narrowed it down to these two of the ryes that I couldn't choose. So then that's when they said, well, why not? Let's do 2. Let's do 2 barrels. I'm like, let's do 2. So that made my, and the 2, the Evil Twin 1 and the Evil Twin 2, where they did have distinctly different kind of upfront characters, where one was had this maple thing that the other one didn't, and the other one had this more of a spice that they were both great. They were just different.
Yeah.
So
we have Evil Twin 2, right, Chad?
Yes. Evil Twin 2
and that was the one where I felt like it really had this maple thing going on that I hadn't tasted before in a Hill Rock whiskey. Right. And I was very excited about it. And I've got through quite a few bottles of that since like October or something when I first got some. Yeah, it's such an exciting and cool thing to get to be a part of, because we're going back to New York probably in May or June for the summer, and so we're gonna go there, and I'm actually gonna get up and distill. Like I'm gonna get up a bunch of mornings and be down there at 7 a.m.
Nice.
and actually do it with the guys there and distill and really learn, because I've seen it and I obviously have an understanding of how booze is made, but to actually be a part of it and actually do it and go through every step of the way and do it for like a week, it's something I'm super excited about trying.
Oh, I'd definitely be excited about that. It's such a cool process from, getting the grain from the fields to all the processes in between to the bottle. I find that industry to be very remarkable and enjoyable to learn about. And you were talking about the rick houses. That's one of my favorite things. I'm going to be down in Kentucky in March. We're doing a bottle of 1792. But when you drive up to those rick houses and that aroma, the angel share comes at you, and then you're getting the grain and the corns and just it's sensory overload.
Yeah, it's so good. At Hill Rock too, they do a single malt, and they do it old school Scotland. They've got the malt house and it's all on the floor, and then they dry it and they push it through this thing in the floor, and then that goes down to where it gets the peat smoke, and the smell in the malt house with the peat smoke and everything. I could just live in there.
Right. Do you get down with any scotch?
Oh yeah. Actually, I probably drank single malts before even bourbon, just because I had friends who were into that, like in the 90s. So I would taste. They'd be like, "You got to, try this. It's an 18-year-old this or 25-year-old this," and so yeah. I probably acquired my taste for whiskey through Scotland even before Kentucky.
Right. Yeah, the history of Scotch whiskey is a wild history, and of course the history of American whiskey is pretty cool itself.
Sure.
Not as old as Scotch, but I've been getting a little bit more and more into Scotch over this last year, and we were planning a trip to Scotland, but of course COVID happened.
Sure.
And, shut the world down. Thanks, COVID.
Yeah.
What a year it's been. But I've really grown an appreciation for a lot of different scotches, especially the Highland scotches. I think one of my favorites recently is a Glendronach 18-year-old Alder Rice, I believe. Just has these incredible, rich, fruity, and dark notes. It is so crazy good. I highly recommend it if you get a chance to grab one. Mark?
Yeah, one thing that we've noticed, and talking about your journey into whiskey, sometimes it's not about having kind of the geek level of knowledge. It's great that you're going to go in and experience kind of the the distillation process and, you know, going through all of that. But, you know, really it's about experiencing it and tasting all of the different things. So it's, to me, it's very cool to hear that you've got this really wide profile of whiskey, bourbon, and Scotch that you're kind of jumping into, and that you're not quite yet in the realm of where, hey, I'm going to kind of focus in this particular area. And it's interesting to hear you talk about that you kind of came from the Scotch world and you moved into the bourbon world as well. And one of the things that I was going to point out is I think a hallmark of Scotch is the smooth character. You know, Chad talks about, you know, sort of the flavors, and it's kind of, the older it gets, the smoother it gets. And when you get into things like American bourbon or, you know, the stuff that's made over here, I think that sort of rough character, you know, that's the best way that I can describe it. You talk about those spice notes, you talk about kind of the bite that's happening. I think that's a hallmark of the American bourbon industry.
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, I agree 100%. Even still, well, not now because can't go out, but you know, my go-to usually, like if I'm out, let's say we're on tour and we decide to venture out to a bar or something on an off night, generally I'll pick something like Jameson's just to drink straight on ice, because I know like I could have a few of those and it's not going to hurt me. And I keep my wits about me really well.
Right.
And, you know, it's super easy to drink. You know, I'm generally not going to go out, like, especially if I have a show the next day, and be drinking something big and heavy and
Sure.
that I'm going to maybe wake up and not feel so good. But like, even, you know, but Irish and Scottish whiskeys, yeah, generally, especially the lighter ones, some that would always be my go-to when I'm out at a bar.
You may want to check into Stranahan's locally or Colorado out here.
Colorado whiskey.
Good stuff, man.
Cool.
That's a great segue if you don't mind, and let's kind of jump in, Chad, if you're okay. You got anything else you want to cover there?
No, go for it, Mark.
So I believe, or something that I often try to connect is, you know, there's this connection to whiskey and experiences, right? You know, your Lemmy story is a great story, right? It didn't end well, but there's a connection there, right? You're sort of connecting whiskey to this thing, and it happens probably throughout our lives. We have. I'm going to be turning 50 in March, and I'm putting feelers out there like, hey, what bottle should I buy? I'm connecting it to kind of that experience.
Sure.
What would be interesting is do you have any stories from the road, from your adventures, that may involve whiskey outside of what you shared that would be interesting for us to hear?
Other than the only one that comes to mind is back in 90, it would have been 90, it was 97, when we went out on that tour with Pantera, end of 97, and I had told Daryl that I wanted him to teach me how to drink, because, you know, I was really good at, I could stand around and nurse a beer all night long. I was very good at that. And I was really good at dumping shots on the floor. But I decided, like, I made an adult decision at that point in my life where I just figured it was time for me to, like, learn how to do this and not have it be like where if I drink, it always ends up where I have alcohol poisoning and I can never drink again. So it's either like, I'm going to learn how to do this properly, or that's it. I'll just never be a drinker. I'm never going to drink. And so I figured, well, I'm going out with Pantera. What better group of guys than to learn trial by fire? And so when I asked him, I said, hey man, I can't wait for the tour. And, you know, so, hey, I want you to teach me how to drink. And he's like, he didn't hear. He's like, what did you say? You know, his nickname for me was Baldini. And he was like, what'd you say, Baldini? Like, what? I said, I want you to teach me how to drink. I want to come out and be able to drink with you guys. I want to be able to hang, you know. And he's like, you understand the door you're opening? You know, like, I was like, I get it. I get it. It's going to be rough. And I was like, but, you know, I want you to be, you'll be Yoda and I'll be Luke. And he was like, what? He didn't even get that reference. It was like right over his head. But, you know, kind of long story short, yeah, it was rough. I said, I'm in your hands. And so like the first day of the tour, he walks in the dressing room, and as he would do normally with a tray of black tooths or black teeth. And, you know, but I would never drink. I never drink before a show. It's just, I never, not even still now. But, he was like, just do one, it'll loosen you up. I'm like, yeah, I'm afraid it might get too loose.
Right.
He's like, don't, just do one. I won't make you do two. Just do one. And so I did one, and that was fine. But so that was the start. And I figured, all right, this is pretty easy. No worries. Now I play the show. But no, he was on stage handing me shots in between songs. And that first week of that tour was rough. I mean, it was literally, I mean, I remember being on his bus that first night, and I had already drank more than I'd ever drank in my life. And I had gone into the bathroom on their bus. It's like 4:00 in the morning to throw up, and just sick. But thank God I'm getting it out of me, and I'll go to bed. And I came out of the bathroom, and he's sitting there waiting for me with a big old smile on his face with another shot. And I was like, dude, I just got sick. I can't drink another shot. What, are you crazy? Like, in my mind, that's it. Once you're sick, that's it. You're done, right?
Yep.
And he's like, no, Baldini, it just means you got more room. I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna die, right?
I'm sorry, but I had to write down Baldini. I just right. I had to put that down.
So I do another one. And I said, that's it. And that was literally, to this day in my life, because I've rarely gotten sick from drinking that much since 1997, because I don't drink like that. But that was the hardest shot I've ever done in my life after being so sick, and then shooting that, and it just burned, and I felt horrible, and I passed out and woke up the next day at like 3:00 in the afternoon, and he's still awake, hasn't gone to bed. And he's waiting for me with a Coors Light saying, you need to get this in you right away. I was like, God damn it. But I made it through that first week and, you know, boot camp. And in a weird way, it's a really proud moment, because it took about a week or so in to where, because I would have my own bottle of Crown. It would say Baldini's bottle written on it in Sharpie. And he would with the Sharpie, he would mark off, you know, every time he would pour from it, he would mark off the levels and stuff. And he was very professional about this. And got to the point where by the end of a night, about a week and a half in, I had finished a bottle of Crown Royal by myself. And they were all chanting for me as I did the last shot. And so in a weird way, it was a very proud and at the same time, like, oh my God, what am I doing moment. I just drank a bottle of whiskey. And when I came home from that tour, because that was like 6-7 weeks, I literally, like, I had a new superpower by the time I got home. Because not only had I like graduated boot camp, I became a professional halfway through. And so when I got home, my friends at home had no idea what they knew me as a guy who would nurse a beer all night. And I could come home now and could just drink whiskey all night long, no problem. So how many, so I started messing with my friends big time, and we'd go out to a bar and I'd order like, you know, Irish. This was the 90s. I'd order like, it would be like 3 of us at a bar, and I'd order 20 Irish car bombs. And my friends are like, are more people coming?
Yeah.
Yep, sucker.
Yeah, I'm like, no, why? And they're like, well, that's a lot of Guinness and a lot of Jamesons. I'm like, what's the problem?
Yeah, exactly.
Drink up.
Drink up, boys.
Scott, you've changed. What happened?
Yeah, none of my friends wanted to hang out with me anymore. They're like, what are you, from Texas now? Like,
Scott's on the do not call list.
Yeah.
Can't party with this man no more.
I had a really good run that ended 97 and 98 doing that with those guys. But then I quickly realized I really didn't need to drink at that level.
Right.
Well, first off, I found out, good lucky for me, I'm not an alcoholic, because I could just
Yeah.
not drink too. Um, and I quickly tapered that off, and then just became a normal guy who could go to dinner and share a bottle of wine with his wife, or or have a drink. I could pour a whiskey and have a drink and watch a TV show and enjoy it and go to bed. Like, I just basically, I got that out of my system late 90s, early 2000s, and then realized I don't need to drink like this. I could just drink casually, because I actually enjoy the taste of it.
Right. The
Yeah,
taste
there you
is
go.
phenomenal.
Yeah. And that's the origin of the healer, right? That's why you called that bottle the healer.
Yeah,
Because...
that came from Daryl. His line was, it would cure what ails you, no matter what it was, whether you were hungover, so hair of the dog, or you had the flu. Whatever it was, I'm sure if Daryl was still with us, it would have cured COVID too at this point.
This is the reason why I think I haven't gotten it.
He would have found the right concoction of alcohol and a sugary mixer that he would have cured the coronavirus.
Definitely rest in peace, for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
A question, and you've played some of the biggest stages, and I'm sure you've been on some very small stages. Is it different playing in those different scenes, or is it kind of the same?
I don't, big stages are just easier because you've got nothing in the way. I'm a very physical performer, and
Yes, you are.
so if I don't have to think about the space I'm in, it just makes my life easier going on stage. I don't have to worry about bumping into something, I guess. Whereas on a smaller stage, for me, then you subconsciously, you're aware of your space when you're moving, and I just never like to feel like I don't have room. So, but other than that, in general, no, I'm so focused on what I'm doing. Once I walk out on a stage, the surroundings kind of disappear. It doesn't really make a difference to me.
That's cool.
Yeah, I've seen you on big stages and small stages over the years, and you put on one hell of a performance wherever you're at.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So there's an interesting thing about whiskey being sort of this sensory experience, right? And maybe there's something monumental that you've done. You finished recording an album, or you're getting off stage and it's a huge festival. You just played in front of a bunch of people. Now, notwithstanding the obvious Daryl handing you something from that perspective, but have you ever been in that moment where you've come across a big milestone and you take a drink of whiskey and it's like, oh my God, this is the best whiskey I've ever tasted? Have circumstances ever influenced your taste of something to where it's like, this is the best thing ever? Oh, well, that's bottom shelf Jack Daniels, Scott. Oh, well, certainly didn't taste like that in the moment.
My answer is probably.
Well, let me morph the question then. Do you have a ritual when you finish something? Like, you talk about
not really.
Okay.
No, I can't say that I do. I mean, yeah, sure. There's been many causes to celebrate in my lifetime, and drinks have been drunk, but no, I can't say that I have a specific ritual or anything like that. I mean, right now I'm looking forward to, I'm certainly going to crack something on July 18th for our 40th. Or I might go buy something. That's the thing. Like, I have a couple of really nice bottles. Like I told you, I've got that bottle of Pappy's.
Yep.
I still have one bottle of 25-year-old Macallan in the house. I've got like a 30-year-old Talisker. I've got a 30-year-old, though I can't, what is it? Total brain fart. But anyway, but then I'm like, well, I don't want to open that because then I won't have that anymore. So I might just go buy something specifically, look for something. I mean, I'm not going to buy a 40-year-old bottle of whiskey. That would these days be way too expensive.
Sure.
But maybe a 40-year-old cognac or a 40-year-old Armagnac or a 40-year-old vintage port. It's just something to commemorate the 40th, something like that. Like, I know, like I've got a bottle of, how old would it be? So 80, it's too old. I've got a bottle of Graham's 1977 port downstairs that I've been holding on to, but that's not
very nice.
That's 43 or 44. So, yeah, I will get something, to certainly. And if I can't find something that I'm interested in that's specifically a 40-year-old something, then I probably will go buy a really nice bottle of whiskey, try and find something really good in a not too crazy of a price range. I'm not going to go spend 10 grand on a bottle of whiskey.
Right.
Sure. I'd rather spend that money somewhere else.
Yeah,
sure. No, I'm with you. That's the same thing for me. Like I said, I think, for a milestone for me that's coming up, I'm going to go and buy a bottle and, just sort of make that connection to that bottle, that taste in that moment. And look, I mean, you do have a ritual. You're looking to connect that, that's a monumental occasion, the 40th anniversary of the band. And, hopefully there's an opportunity later in the year. If you're so inclined, come back and talk to us about that. I think that would be an incredible moment to share with you, to talk about how that's connected to whiskey, and, and to hear a little bit more about, maybe if you're on solid ground about what the next release is, we'd love to talk about that as well.
Yeah. I mean, I'm already planning I'm planning my 60th, which is 3 years away still. But before COVID, my birthday's New Year's Eve. So
wow.
Like over the years, my wife and I, and we put together a crew of people and go somewhere on the planet for usually that week right after Christmas through New Year's, and we've been all over the place. And mainly for the bigger birthdays, not every year, but my 60th is a few years away, and I figured we should be traveling by then. And
hopefully,
God willing.
And I'm thinking, and my best friend actually lives in Glasgow, so Glasgow, and so I'm thinking maybe for my 60th, doing something where a crew of people, we stay in a castle in Scotland somewhere, and it would all I could picture is it's got to be like a big old place with a giant fireplace and lots of old whiskey. That's how I picture my freezing cold outside. That's how I picture celebrating my 60th, and so I've just started planting the seeds for that one.
I got some people over there. Stuart Bachman comes to mind. He's the global brand ambassador of Glendronach. Be a good guy to put you in contact with.
Yeah, for sure. I'll let you know if that's what's happening. Yeah,
sure. Well, just quickly, Chad, did you have any additional questions? Anything that you wanted to cover?
No, not at all. I just wanted to say I sincerely appreciate you taking the time with us, and
definitely
loving what you're doing with Hill Rock. They're a great distiller, and keep rocking the music that you guys put out. We as a metal fan, we appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to ask about that. I had read that you're pretty deep into writing a new album, but the statement that you made was you're not going to release anything until you can tour behind it. Any further insights around that?
No, nothing. Just
good enough. Good enough.
Slowly but surely working on a record. I would love to get it done this year if we're ready, and logistically all that can happen. That would be my goal, certainly. But as far as when, I personally would prefer to wait until we have a much more concrete idea of when we can start doing things again.
Makes total sense.
Hopefully
any other projects that you're working on that you'd like to talk about?
We're finishing the Motor Sister record that we started We started that album back in March. We were actually in the studio when quarantine started, literally in the middle of guitar tracks when we got the call that things were shutting down the next day. So we all left to go to the grocery store. Yeah, we just finished guitars on that like last week. And my wife Pearl and Jim Wilson, the other guitar player and singer, they've been finishing all the vocals over the last week or two, and should be ready to mix in a couple of weeks. So that's going to be done. But again, no idea when we're going to release it. That's also just the question of, we're talking to Metal Blade about that. Like, well, what should we do? And so we're just going to try and formulate some kind of plan of when and how and what's the best way to do it.
Well, if the stars align and you have a release and you've picked up your bottle and you got more plans on your 60th, please come back and visit us. We'd love to talk about all the new records, and we'd love to talk about your new whiskey experiences.
For sure.
We do something really special with all of our guests, and there is a series of 5 questions that we like to ask everyone, and it's kind of quick, rapid fire answers, and it's fun for the audience to hear what it is that you say. These are very common questions that we hear in our social media community. So that's why we developed this piece, and it's kind of a great hallmark for you. So if you're ready, I'd love to fire these questions at you.
I'm ready.
Okay. What was the last whiskey, bourbon, or scotch that was in your glass?
The barrel 4-year-old rye.
Do you prefer to drink your whiskey out of a specific type of glass?
Just usual tumbler, normal whiskey tumbler shape.
Real quick.
I've kind of got my everyday ones, and then I got some real fancy, like Baccarat or something that someone gave me as a gift years ago. Mm-hmm. But I get too nervous drinking out of those. So my wife had glasses made on my 50th that say like Scott fucking Ian, something like that, like on them. So
you can't say fuck.
What's that?
I said you can't say fuck.
Those are my everyday ones.
Damn, I need to get glasses like that. Sorry. Do you have a unicorn bottle?
Yeah, my unicorn bottle would be my 20-year-old Pappy's. I can't imagine when or what would get me to open it, because I doubt, unless someone's going to give me another one, or I can get a really great deal on one, I can't see ever spending the money on buying another one. So because I've got a lot of friends in the booze business and GMs of restaurants and stuff, and I've got buddies are telling me you should sell that and then put it into wine. You could get a couple of great cases of wine for what I could sell that for you for. And I'm like, I don't want to be bothered. I'm just gonna just stays in the cabinet. It's fine.
I love the fact that you're just a bourbon drinker or a whiskey drinker like all of us. We all think the same thing, and that's awesome. That's a great connection. I am looking for a gift for a friend. The budget is between $50 and $75. What would you recommend?
Between 50 and 75.
Yep.
The Hill Rock is just right out of that.
Outside the park.
Yes, yeah. I think
you can say Hill Rock. I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I think the Hill Rock Solera bourbon is like 89 retail,
90,
something like that. So of course I'm going to recommend that. The Hill Rock Solera bourbon. I think that's especially for someone, maybe if they're not a big whiskey drinker, it's super approachable. It tastes amazing. It's just so smooth. That's why our first Hill Rock was a bourbon and not the rye. I wanted to go rye first, and when they sent us all the stuff to taste, and my wife tasted that Solera, and she was like, "This is like the easiest drinking bourbon I've ever tried in my life. It tastes so good, and it's just so approachable." And I figured, that's probably the way to go, just because a lot of people buying it probably are never even going to open it. They're just collecting it. But if they do, they might not necessarily be real whiskey drinkers, and it'll make it a lot easier for them to approach.
Whiskey Network is all about consuming the whiskey. We're all
about sharing whiskey with
buy
friends
it,
and family.
drink it, share it. Absolutely.
So,
Finally.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, please. Yes, jump in.
If somebody wanted to find a bottle of this, where do they go?
Well, those are sold out.
Well, I know they're sold out.
Yeah.
But for your future releases?
Yeah, I mean, through Hill Rock, the distribution has been through this online distributor called Mash and Grape.
Okay.
Like mashandgrape.com, I believe.
Yeah.
Yep.
They've been doing all the distribution because they ship to almost every state, so it's worked out really well.
Great. I'm sure they sell out pretty darn quick.
Yeah, it's luckily it does. It's been.
I was very happy
awesome
to be able to get this bottle for my shelves.
Nice.
And,
yeah, the last release sold out in a few hours. It was gone.
Yeah.
Right on. Yeah.
Cool. Good stuff. Okay, final. Last question. What's your favorite toast?
What's my favorite toast?
Yes.
It's got a really gnarly swear word in it. I might get.
Go for it, baby.
Okay,
Please do.
well,
Yes. Absolutely.
From what I understand, it's an old Scottish toast because that's who I learned it from. And a funny story about this, at my dad's, would it have been his 70th or 75th? I can't remember which one, but I got up to say a toast, and I warned the room. It's a big room of relatives and people, and I warned them. I said, I've got my usual toast, but I'm afraid it might be a little too, I don't know, it might be offensive to some people here. And people, no, do it. I'm like, okay, you all asked for it. And it's a simple one. It just goes, here's to us and those like us, and all the rest are cunts.
I love it.
And I say that toast in front of this whole room of family and relatives, and I see my dad gets a big smile on his face, and silence, crickets. And I could see people like whispering to each other, like, oh yeah, he's into heavy metal and
rock stars and heavy metal. Yes,
those musicians are crazy, like it's like, but I loved it. It was such a great moment.
That's awesome.
Well, here's to us and those who are like us, and the rest are cunts.
Yes.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Scott, thank you for your time. Chad, appreciate you being here to talk whiskey. This was a great time. I really hope that there's an opportunity for you to come back, Scott. You are always welcome here at the Whiskey Network. Thank you.
Oh, thank you guys. Cheers, man. Thank you so much.